Hi, I'm Dan Shinder with Drum Talk TV, and you're watching Musicians on the Record with David Ward. Hit it!
1, 2, 3, 4.
This is huge, musicians on the record. Bring it on.
Welcome to Musicians on the Record. I'm your host, David Ward. You've heard the music, now hear their story. I'm so excited to have on the show CEO, creator, and executive producer of Drum Talk TV, Dan Shinder is on the show. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. How's everybody doing? How are you doing, David?
I'm doing great, and I'm really psyched to have you here on the show and to talk with you. I wanted to sort of start with the news of the day, the sad news, as far as with the accident with Dave Garibaldi, and I wanted to just start with your reaction around that.
You know, it's unfortunate when anybody, and I'm plugging these in, sorry, because it might help on here. It's unfortunate when anybody is injured or gets into an accident, but for some reason, I don't know what I'm doing here, but for some reason, you know, it resonates with us even more when it's somebody that we have followed in the music industry or someone that we know personally in the music industry because of the awareness of it. So it's very sad this has happened. So far from what I know, it looks like they're both going to be okay. I believe Mark sustained more serious injuries, but just the nature of the accident itself, I mean, to get hit by a car or a kid on a bike or a fruit cart or something like that is one thing, but a train, you know, just the thought of what could have happened is horrible, you know, so absolutely. Hope that they're going to be okay.
Right, absolutely. Sending out some healing prayers and energy to them, both of them.
Right.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. So today I certainly want to talk about Drum Talk TV and all the amazing stuff that you're doing, but I also want to talk about your story. And let's maybe start with where it started for you. Where did your music story start? Well,
thank you. I started when I was right before I was 7 years old. This is 1969 or 1970. Ooh, I may have given something away there. And I had an older cousin who played drums, and I saw him play in a band, and I really wanted to play drums. And my parents were nice enough and crazy enough to give this little kid drum lessons, and they said if I stick with it, they'll buy me a drum set.
Wow.
So I had a practice pad for about the first maybe 2 months or 3 months, and they saw that I was really into it. I was fortunate enough to start with a 5-piece Pearl kit. My parents were not rich. Things were a lot different back then. Things cost a lot different back then.
Yeah.
And I started playing to music on the radio as well as studying my lessons. Now, the significance of this in the time period is that on the radio, this is before music genres were segregated as much as they are now.
Yeah.
So back in my day, and I grew up in Los Angeles, California, there was a radio station called KHJ, 93 KHJ. I even remember the thing. And I'd put my headphones on, and I would play to whatever came on. And what might come on, it might be Bobby Sherman, then it might be Steppenwolf, then it might be The Fifth Dimension, then it might be Jimi Hendrix, then it might be Cream, then it might be Barbra Streisand. So, you know, a lot of the funk and soul stuff. So I'm playing to all these styles of music and had no idea as a little kid that they're different styles of music. I just played to them, and thankfully for radio, they played the same over and over and over. So all I got to do is put on my headphones and play for 2 hours. I'm going to play to the same song at least 3 or 8 times within that 2-hour rotation. So I learned the songs, learned the music, learned dynamics and styles and techniques without really seeing them being done, because boys and girls, we didn't have YouTube back then.
That's right.
Or Facebook or anything. And my drum teacher recognized this, so he sort of put me on an advanced sort of study plan on the drum set. And I'll never forget, and anybody watching this, whether you play guitar, saxophone, drums, kazoo, tuba, paper and comb, blade of grass, whatever it is, you'll remember this moment because I still, 54 almost, and I still treasure the moment where I sat at the drums and Mark, my teacher, Mark Siebert, if you're watching, hi Mark, he stood behind me and he held my right hand in his and my left hand in his, and he said, just hit the bass drum on 1, 2, 3, 4, and I went boom, 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 and then
wow.
And here I was, 7.5 years old or whatever, 7, playing this beat, and the feeling I got, even though I was being motorized by it, was just like, for me it was like, okay, I get it now.
Wow.
And I really kind of advanced at a fast rate because of that. By the time I was 12, I was playing stuff like, of course I was not playing like Carl Palmer, but I was playing Carnival 9, Close to the Edge, 20-minute epics and stuff because of just, I had this belief, and I still live by this, I had this belief that I refuse to believe I can't do it,
Yeah.
And I just dove in, and I loved playing to my favorite music, and I still do. So I started when I was 7 and went through the same thing a lot of people did. I took drum lessons. I stopped taking the lessons. I did play in the school band in junior high, played in concert band, Tuesday night jazz band. I did try out drumline in high school.
Wow.
And after about 3 months, I had to bail. It was just, and I admire anybody that's taken drum and bugle corps and made something of it. It was just too rigid for me. It was too rigid. Honestly, I wasn't fond of the teacher. It wasn't a good experience on that. It just wasn't fun for me. And by that time at 15, I was already playing in a band that was gigging on the weekends, and we were practicing at night, and I had to make sure I did my homework, keep my grades up and everything. So all the extra work with drumline, I just unfortunately, I didn't have that experience, but I admire and respect so much people that have gone through that.
Yeah.
A lot of friends of mine in the professional world and just casual friends of mine, it really helped their playing, and I kind of missed out on that. But from there, I went on my first tour when I was 15 with a band called Spirit of America, and it was basically a vocal group that had a band. I was in the 3-piece band, and we opened for bands like Seals and Crofts, Blue Oyster Cult, Styx, Heart, and I'm 15 years old, traveling around the country, getting paid to play music. And actually, just a quick little story on that. My mother, because this is a lesson for everybody.
Yeah.
My mother found the audition. My parents were very, very supportive. They came to gigs. I had bands that practiced at home when I was younger. It was great. So my mom found this audition, and she says, hey, you want to grow up and go on tour? Let's go to this audition. And you don't have to play yet. Just watch the band do their thing because their other drummer is leaving. So we sat in this auditorium. We're the only 2 people in the auditorium, and the band is rehearsing for a tour that the drummer won't be going on. So the audition was for this tour. And so they start playing, and they're playing like Linda Ronstadt, Neil Diamond, Barbra Streisand, ABBA, stuff like that. And at the time, I'm playing Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Jethro Tull, ELP, yes, crazy stuff. So I lean over to my mom, and I said, Mom, I don't really want to play this kind of music. She literally grabbed me by the shirt and shook me and said, you said you wanted to grow up and be a professional musician. You're going to get paid to play around the country. Your father and I could never send you on a trip like this. Look at what they're doing. Don't you want to do this? And at the moment she said that, I remembered that it doesn't matter what I play. I just want to play. Like when I was a kid, listening to the radio station, playing all those different genres and didn't know the difference, so it didn't matter then. Right. So why should it now? And I went on that tour and had the most amazing experience. I toured with them again the following year at 16. And from there, started playing professionally, doing sessions. Did the whole band thing, professional band thing. Played all over Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. I grew up in LA. Wow. And then I kind of got, I can't wait to hear how many people this resonates with. I got tired of being married to 4 other goofballs and their girlfriends and all their drama. So I decided to stop being in a band. Plus I got married, had my first child. So I started producing other bands and also started writing and producing commercial jingles and voice directing, doing voiceovers, and then doing music for independent films, and kind of went that route. And then got out of music for quite a while. And as my wife loves to say, he just played with himself for years because I would just put on my favorite music and play to it.
Right.
And then that kind of in a weird roundabout way, after getting into video and TV, I had believe it or not, in the early 2000s, I had a cooking show on television.
Wow.
And that's where I learned about video. And it still never occurred to me, hey, maybe I should interview drummers. It didn't even occur to me. I did the cooking show for 3.5 years. Then I did corporate videos. And then after a while, I decided to circle back to music and have an online lesson platform called Dan's Drum Clinics. And my wife encouraged me and kind of pushed me, and it evolved into Drum Talk TV, which now reaches 20 million people a month, has 1 million people a week engaging on our Facebook page alone, like real active fans engaging with our content every week. And I've toured, I've composed, I've taught, I've recorded, I've done all those things. I've never had as much fun as a drummer doing Drum Talk TV, even though most of the time I'm not playing drums on Drum Talk TV, but I'm using all my experiences I've had in music doing all those different things to be able to pull the stories out of other people like you are out of me from the business so that we can all learn from those things. And everyone has a different story, which is why I love the concept of what you're doing. It's all about storytelling, and that's where we learn. It's where we get entertained. There's history. Yeah, it's like I feel you can't learn the different branches of music unless you learn the roots of where it came from. It's the same thing if you admire a particular musician, no matter what they play, to really learn like who were their influences, what was it about those influences that inspired them, and then how did their style develop. It's kind of the same thing not only with my own music, but with the business of Drum Talk TV.
If you haven't heard of it yet, check it out, drumtalktv.com, correct? That's what it
Yes,
is, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you can actually participate in the madness on the Facebook page. And the difference between drumtalktv.com and Drum Talk TV on Facebook is this. On drumtalktv.com, that's kind of like the broadcast engine for all our interviews. And we interview artists, we interview educators, we interview makers of great gear. And on the Facebook page, we do sprinkle those interviews through our broadcast on Facebook, but about 70% of our content on Facebook is content that's sent into us from our fans from over 100 countries. And obviously we can't post everybody's video for many reasons, but the videos we do post are how we expose people to other stuff they might not be familiar with, not just other artists, but different styles of music, like Abdul Halim in south of India playing the Gatham clay pot drum, all the way to someone playing, a string dulcimer in Turkey, all the way to, hand drums in North Africa, to jazz drumming in Korea, and of course all the mainstream forms of music and drumming. So that's mainly the two differences between the two destinations. And we got a lot of new things planned for 2017 that I just can't talk about that yet. I hate when people say that. I shouldn't have said that. But stay tuned and please check it out. And it's a lot of fun. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't be doing it, and if it wasn't fun, I wouldn't be inviting people to do it. So, and you know what? Look, trust me, I'm a drummer. You can trust me on this. If you want a Drum Talk TV shirt, go to the website. There's a place to get that too. Awesome. And I apologize for the long-winded answers. I really, truly love what I do. So I tend to get a little wordy about it.
No, I can hear it. I can feel it. It's fantastic. I love it. And, I wonder, you talked about the cooking show, and obviously you do Drum Talk TV. Any thought or fantasy of combining them? Could you imagine?
Here's the thing. Here's something I can tell you that's new for this year. I've been planning this for about 3 months, and I am starting a new cooking show.
Wow.
And I've just sort of set up the framework. I've set up the website. I've set up the Facebook, but nothing's really happening yet because it's a lot of work for Drum Talk TV. When we wind down the end of the year and we get the new year fired up, and we're going to cover the NAMM. There's so many things, and we just moved on top of that, which is crazy. Yeah. So I haven't spent a lot of energy getting it going, but it's called Food That Craves You, and it's Food That Craves You on Facebook. It's Food That Craves You on .com. And within Food That Craves You, there's going to be about 3 different cooking shows. One is going to be on my own and one's going to be with my wife, and one's going to be just my wife. Actually, we might have instead of me by myself, another one with my wife and I, where we go out and we interview different restaurants around the country, around the world and stuff. One that is just my wife's and one that's the two of us together. So we're just getting ready to ramp that up. Now, I haven't considered combining it with music, but I will be combining it with some things that she's doing. My wife is an artist, and we're going to start doing retreats out here where we live. And I'm going to be catering those retreats, and she's going to be providing music that goes along with the theme, with whatever the art theme is of the retreat. So that's about as close as it'll get.
There's a lot of talent in your house, it sounds like. We got music, we got art, we got food and cooking. So yeah. Most people know you then, or a lot of people do, obviously, with the Drum Talk TV. Talk about, do you have training in cooking? What's your experience there?
Well, we are going to also, in this new beautiful place we moved to in Globe, Arizona, a tiny mountain town, an old copper mining town, I will be giving cooking classes and cooking retreats. So people will be able to come out, stay for like 3 days, and each day will be kind of a different cooking class. My wife, like I said, will be doing some art things. She has this one event called Bubbles and Brushes. It's just like it sounds. It's drinking wine and painting pictures. Or if you don't drink alcohol, that's okay too. We'll have Martinelli's apple juice, tea, all kinds of things. And she does these really nice events. And then, if you don't mind, there is another sort of training. For the last 3 years, I've been teaching social media marketing to musicians, and makers of gear, entrepreneurs inside and outside the music industry. And that's a business I have called Social Media on Steroids. And that's something, honestly, David, I'm as passionate about that as I am music. I really am. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, and can you talk about that too? Because certainly the business has changed a lot, where if you don't have a social media presence, not a lot of people know about you. So can you talk about that?
Absolutely, and I appreciate that, because it's important that everyone understands this. Like David said, if you don't have a social media presence, you don't exist. You know, everyone can say, well, yeah, but back in the day. Well, this isn't back in the day. This is now. And if you have 1,000 Facebook likes, 4,000 Facebook likes, 10,000, what do you think that's really doing for you? There's almost 2 billion people on Facebook every month. Forget Twitter for a moment. Forget Instagram. Forget Pinterest, Tumblr, knick-knack, paddywhack, stick it up your... Forget about all those for a minute. There's almost 2 billion people on Facebook. Why would you not want to reach more of them for what you do? And I see a lot of people that start a crowdfunding campaign to put on a show or put on an event or do an album, and they don't take the time or put in the work to build a fan base that is the crowd that they're going to ask money for. They've got 2,000 likes on their Facebook page and they want to do a crowdfunding campaign. It just doesn't make sense. So what I teach people how to do is everything I've done to build the Drum Talk TV brand. Like I said, we reach, right now it's 20 million people a month and have about 1 million post engagements on the Facebook page alone, and we've never boosted posts, and we've never paid for advertising, and I can teach anybody to do this no matter what they do. It's the same for music gear makers, it's the same for music media companies, it's the same for musicians, it's the same for pizza, shoes, boats, dog walking service, anything. And again, I'm passionate about it because it works. If you do what I teach, there's no way that it won't work.
Yeah.
And I cringe when I scroll through the Facebook feed and I see people that are, you know, it's one thing to post incorrectly or not effectively because you haven't learned, but it's another thing when I see people really try to build something out of something they don't really have a presence with. It just doesn't make sense. And it's not hard to do, but it can be hard work in the beginning. And it works. You know, if it works, who cares how much work it takes to do if you're going to get the results, you know? And I'm proof of that, really. I didn't go to college. I didn't start Drum Talk TV with any money. It was a little couch change and belly button lint. We had a lot more belly button lint lying around than couch change, and now it's a big business. You know, we reach more people online and have more people engaging with us online than any other media company in music, and especially the drumming world. And it's a real passion of mine to share what I've developed and what I've learned and what we've put into action to create that sort of brand and engagement and brand love with our fans of a target market, so that they can get what they want out of it. And so the entrepreneurs can grow a business, and existing businesses who are spending tens of thousands of dollars on advertising that they don't need to. And yeah, they'll still advertise, and that's fine. But there's so many ways that even I work with $1 million companies on this too. And I think, man, the basic garage band can take these same things, and the ones that are smart do, and build a brand out of themselves so that they can record their own record, release it on their own label, not give extra money to some bigger label, or use that as a vehicle to get picked up by a bigger label from, because they want to see that you can, prove and sell records first. So you got to make it happen on your own. It's not like the old days when I was growing up playing on Sunset Strip, where there's some fat guy in the back of the room with a cigar and a stack of contracts waiting for the next Led Zeppelin to step up at the Troubadour. That's not going on right now.
Right, that's right.
And even if it is, they want to know, do you have a following?
That's right.
It's another way to get picked up for a tour. I mean, if you teach lessons, I could go on and do a whole show on just that.
So with social media on steroids, can you describe, Dan, what's the sort of format of the program, and how would somebody connect with you if they want to learn more about that?
Sure. Well, thanks. I can and do teach it very frequently one-on-one on Skype. And when I teach it on Skype, I use the same PowerPoint presentations that we use when we teach it in a live environment. Sometimes we have live seminars and workshops that we teach, and there might be 20, 30, 50 people in the room, and they certainly learn. But the advantage of taking it one-on-one from me on Skype is that it's just us, and you get a questionnaire ahead of time, and I teach it specific to your goals and your challenges, which is a whole different thing. There's also a 2-month follow-up program that's included, and it's a lot of fun. And again, it's taught specific to what you want to accomplish. So whether you're new in the music business as far as creating a product for other people to use, or if you're a music store retailer, if you're a brand, if you're a musician, if you're an artist, if you're a publicist or manager, you want to learn how to take care of your people better, I can help you do that. The way they can find out about that is to email me at dan@smosmasterclass.com. So it's dan@smosmasterclass.com, and we can talk about doing it one-on-one. And one-on-one doesn't mean it has to be one person. If you're a band, I'll teach it to all of you, or sometimes it's 2 band members and their management. If it's a big company, honestly, what I prefer to do is get flown to where the company is. I teach it at their home base. Usually that's about a 4-day thing. Typically, my master class online is 3 3-hour sessions. So it's not like you're stuck having to sign on with me on Skype 3 times a week for 15 weeks. It's nothing like that at all. And it's so easy, even a drummer can do it.
There you go.
So I encourage you to, not be shy, and if you have questions, email me about it. I'm not going to hard sell you. I don't like to be sold like that. If it's a fit for you, it's a fit. If it's not, it's not. It's really that simple. I'd love to hear from some people and questions, and I can at least evaluate where you're at and give you some advice and show you how my course would help you. And if you're just not ready for it, I'm still happy to answer some questions.
Yeah. That's great. I mean, obviously, you are a talented guy. You got a lot of stuff going on, not only a musician and drummer, but a business entrepreneur with all of this stuff.
Thank you.
I'm curious. I don't imagine that you started out with this sort of mindset of, I'm going to create all of this. I was curious, what was your original dream, so to speak, with music?
Oh, I'm glad you put in with music, because I was just about to give you a different answer.
Or you can talk about business too, but
yeah. Well, my original dream was to become an archaeologist or an oceanographer.
Wow.
Yeah, and I really was into oceanography. I took a couple classes on it when I was young. I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau, and then my father in 1977 took me to see Led Zeppelin.
Wow.
And I said, "Wait, you mean you can do this for a living?" Right. There went oceanography, and I wanted to be a professional musician. So from that point, that really was my dream. I had the same dream as most other young musicians. I wanted to be, quote unquote, a rock star or a professional musician. I wanted to compose music that people love, create albums, go on tour, see the world, all that stuff. That morphed over time when it got harder and harder to do that. And quite honestly, I think what ruined it for me And that's a temporary statement because I love how everything turned out. But in the 80s, I was in a hardcore progressive rock band. What happened in the 80s? Two things happened. There was a large new wave and punk movement, and there was a large heavy metal spandex hair band movement. I was not open to conforming to anything. I was more interested in playing music that was a combination of Steely Dan, Yes, ELP, and Supertramp.
Yeah.
And I was very stubborn about that. So I kind of missed that boat, and that's when I got into doing the producing and everything. But when I got out of music almost completely, and I had a business life, and then I had my video production company. And when it came back to doing music, and when my wife kind of helped push me towards making this Drum Talk TV thing, really just Drum Talk TV, it's not like I wanted to be the biggest, but I knew what I wanted to do. I said, I just know, just like my cooking show, I knew how I wanted it to look and feel and what the takeaway would be for people. That was important to me. What would people take away? Well, I wanted them to learn from the guests. I wanted them to be entertained, and I wanted them to somehow be able to participate in it. And now that's certainly what we're able to do. The social media on steroids thing came about that because our numbers in our business grew so quickly, I just had this thing where there's so many talented people, and with my wife being part of the art community in her way, we just were aware of so many people in the arts that just know nothing about business or marketing and don't have any guidance of that. They never had a management job. They never owned a company. They just, so, and other companies and entrepreneurs with the same boat. I thought, I really want to share this information. And that's how the development and design of those classes came out. And I really, truly enjoyed doing them so much. And the greatest thing, if I could say, the greatest thing is seeing people get results. Look up Dominic Fragman. Dominic Fragman took my course, and he's so busy that he asked me if I would provide this service instead of him doing it himself. So I manage his social media. Wow. And I manage it for other artists too. Billy Cobham, if that means anything to you.
Sure.
But Dominic Fragman, as we're dated today on the 13th of January, 6 days ago, he posted a video that I insisted over and over he make more of these types of videos. He posted it, and it now has over 55,000 shares on Facebook, almost 3 million views in 6 days. And that's all about knowing the mechanics of how to post something properly, knowing the content that your audience enjoys, and understanding the common interest between the brand, and your audience. And so, that's just one success story. And I'd love to help other folks out there really make more. How can I say? I want to help people make more of a living with what they love doing, and that's what I teach people how to do.
Absolutely, that sounds great. Can you talk a little bit about, Dan, of some of the obstacles or challenges, even with just starting Drum Talk TV, and how you overcame them, and they sort of turned out to be blessings in disguise?
Yes, and this advice, it's a great question because it's not just for people that want to become a media company, or this goes for anybody in any business, in any industry. The first thing is to understand the definition of entrepreneur. A lot of people think entrepreneur, and it means I'm starting my own business, or I'm going to do my own thing, or I'm going to follow my passion. All those things are true. But the true definition of the word is the one who assumes the burden. That is really the definition of the word. And the first year of Drum Talk TV, I knew that no matter who I interview, no matter how good I get at interviewing, none of it matters unless there's an audience there to watch it. So I put 70% of my waking hours into building that audience. There are no days off. There is no 9 to 5. There's no coffee time. It's just a whole different thing. And of course I take breaks but what I mean is you have to live it, breathe it, eat it, and crap it out every single day, and not get worn down by it, and realize that if you're on your own, whether you have money or not to get something like that started, it takes a lot of breathing. It takes a lot of breath to breathe life into something and really make something of it. So you have to love it enough to have the passion to dedicate yourself that way. Now, fortunately, my wife and I are old farts, and we don't have any kids at home anymore. Our kids are grown and gone. We got 8 kids, 8 grandkids, and they don't live at home. So, of course, that makes it a little bit easier, but still, you want to have a life, you know, but you've got to really embrace the fact that, like for me, I'm open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And times like this, ramping up to the NAMM show, I'm working literally 20 hours a day. And I'm not bragging. I'm just trying to inspire those of you out there that really want to make something of what you're doing. Don't wait for the golden angel to tap your forehead while you're sleeping. It takes work, and it takes being strategic and being open to learning what's right and what's wrong about what you're doing and adjusting. So it's 4 work dimensions that you have to include. It's being motivated. It's having a high energy level. It's being flexible and adaptable. No matter how set you are in your ways of the way you want things to turn out, be flexible and adaptable of how to get there and learn from others the way I did. And it will pay off, I guarantee you. And don't ever let anyone tell you you can't do it. Don't ever let the words bother you when you hear people say you're pie in the sky, you're living a dream, your heads are in the clouds. Do not let that bother you. Those are people who are the minions of the world, who couldn't imagine for themselves to start their own company and make something of it. You got to let that roll off your back and love them for who they are.
Right.
Now, it's very important to have that context. It really is. And surround yourself with people who support you, because your friends, at the same time, your friends will nod and tell you how great everything's and hold your hand and walk you to that cliff. You want people like me or David or your peers to say, man, I love what you're after, but this sucks. This is really what you need. You know, be open to that and learn from others who have already accomplished it, because your friends want to coddle you and nurture you, and that's great because we want to surround ourselves with positive energy. But from the academic standpoint and clinical aspect of it, you know, be open to learning from others who have done it. You know,
got to be open to that feedback, the good, bad, and indifferent, right?
Yeah, and again, I apologize for such a long answer, but it's a great question. It's such a passionate topic of mine. It's part of teaching. Part of teaching is understanding where you need to be here and here for what you're learning to work.
Yeah, and it certainly sounds like you've really honed your skills of the teaching aspect. I can hear is really important for you, not only just with music, but with business and the cooking thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And my wife and I are addicted to learning. We're constantly learning, no matter what it is we do, no matter how much it is we teach. Everyone has their guru. You know, I had a cousin who played drums, and look what that inspired. 7 years older than me when I was 6, 7 years old. And then as you grow and advance in life, Tony Robbins has a coach. You know, Oprah Winfrey has a trainer. We could go on, and these people have accomplished the things they have with the same 24 hours a day that we all have. The question is, how are you going to spend those 24 hours? And please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying don't have a life. That's not what I'm saying. My wife and I, wow, really tripping over my words, and I'm a freaking interviewer. I'm sure I sound like this when I interview people, but my wife and I have a beautiful life together, and we do a lot of fun things, but we work our asses off. We now, you know, we moved, and even before we moved, for 9 hours at a time, we're working out of the same facility, and we won't see each other all day. She'll text me, meet me in the kitchen for lunch. You know, we're dedicated. You got to have discipline, and we take just the right times to do just the right things to fill our cup so that we have the energy to do those things, you know.
No question. And actually, let's talk about, because you're an expert interviewer and you interview all kinds of musicians. Absolutely. Tell me from the other side what you've learned of if someone is a musician and wants to learn how to do a good interview, what are some tips that you could give them?
And are you saying if they're the guest or the interviewer?
I'm sorry, if they're the guest as a musician and they want to spread their word in the world, what makes a good interview in your mind as an interviewer?
It's a very good question, because a lot of people, I believe, assume, well, I'll just answer the questions. But here's the thing. You all have a story. Learn to articulate your story. In the old days, and some people use the term still, what's your elevator speech? You always have an elevator speech. You should have 3 versions of that. You should have the elevator speech, the sit-down coffee speech, and the I'm going to be on Fallon speech, or, you know, in Modern Drummer magazine, or Guitar Player, or on David Ward's show. So it's important to have your story up here, and it's kind of like being a politician. No matter what someone asks you, you're going to give the answers you want to give. But of course, keep it relevant to the interview, but really have your story and be able to articulate. You don't have to be as long-winded as I was, but I talk by nature. But really, as an interviewer, I do listen a lot more. So know your story and know how to tell it so that it's compelling. That's the thing. When you scroll through the news feed, everybody, on Facebook, and you look at people's posts, there's some great stuff, but is the story compelling to you? Here's what I have. Wear the fan's hat, okay? I teach this in my course. Wear the fan's hat and think of, would people think your story is compelling? Really record yourself telling the story, watch yourself, because as you get more successful, you're going to want to get more. People will approach you from Modern Drummer, UltimateGuitarPlayer.com, Drum Talk TV, on the record, all these different things. And you've got to have this skill down. So know your story and know how to articulate it. And you can just bullet point it in your mind. Yeah. And if someone asks a story like David asked me, how did it all begin? I've got that early part of my story. If someone says, so what can we look forward to this year? You don't want to be going, okay, so wait, let me think. My manager was talking about something. We just did this thing. Have it down. It should flow. It should be fun. It should articulate and just be part of who you are, because it is.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with practicing it, right? In the car, in the shower, whatever. Right?
Absolutely. It's like every interview you do is like a job interview for your fans. Are they going to follow you or not? Yeah. And I probably lost 10,000 Drum Talk TV fans from how I did this interview, but no.
I'm sure you gained more.
Oh, thanks. But really, I think that's the best way to look at it, is that it's an audition. Every interview is a gig. People are either going to buy more of what you're selling or they're going to tune you out.
Can we also talk about, you've got some incredible videos on drumtalktv.com. I've watched some, the Billy Cobham series, Ian Pace, these legends of drumming. Well, first question is, do you ever just look over and go, oh my God, that's him, right there? But also, is there anybody who you haven't been able to interview yet who is on that list that you want to interview?
Yeah, I can answer both of those. So let's start with the last question first. Yeah. I have a very... so I want to interview everybody. I'm open to, if I had the time and the resources, I get a kick out of people will email us through the website, or people I know will say, hey, you should interview so-and-so. And I say, no, I should interview everybody, So there is a very short list of maybe 5 or 7 people who I kind of don't want to give up who that list is, but what the list is it's people who, if someone said you can only do 1 or 4 more interviews, who would it be? Yeah. These people are on that list. Yeah. Other than that, as long as someone has a story that someone can learn from, I'm open to interviewing them. And really everybody does, but you got to learn how to tell the story, like I was saying. Right. So yeah, I have a short list. I'll tell you one person that's on that short list is Phil Collins. Mm-hmm. And it's for a lot of reasons. Yeah. And the biggest reason is my love and respect I have for every single thing he's done since the early 70s. Yeah. So there's a whole separate topic on that. Now, going back to the other question, I don't get, and I don't know how else to use the term, but I don't get starstruck. Yeah. But I do admire and respect all these big artists and big stars, and I've become very close friends with many of them. I'm close friends with many, and I'm acquaintances with some. Yeah. But there's one interview that I was so excited about. I was like a little kid, and I feel it's my professional job to maintain that. Sure. At home, I don't have to maintain anything until my wife hits me over the head with a rolling pin. So that interview was Ian Pace, and it's because Ian Pace is one of my three biggest influences in drumming. It's John Bonham and Ian Pace and Phil Collins all together.
Great.
So when it came to getting to know Ian and corresponding with him and setting up the interview, I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm going to interview Ian Pace. And I was really, it was the only interview, no offense to Stuart Copeland, Nico McBrain, and all these other great
Right,
musicians,
of course,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, but for Ian, I was really kind of nervous. And I remember we were operating out of Las Vegas at the time. He was staying at the hotel before the gig, and he said, why don't you just come to my hotel room and interview me here? It's quiet. And I thought, wow, that's great. Yeah. So my tech came with me, and I'm like racing through the casino to get to the hotel part, and he's trying to keep up with me. And in the elevator, he's like calming me down, saying, I've never seen you like this. You got to relax, you know? You got to do good. He's like starting to coach me, right? The
right.
camera tech is coach. And I'm like, okay, I'll relax. So I'm still like speed walking through the hall. We get to the hall, I knock on the door. I can hear my heart. And I'm thinking, I'm about to interview Ian Pace, you know? And so I had a peephole in the door, and I see the light shifting, and I'm telling Harold, he's coming. When Ian opened the door and I saw his face, and what my wife refers to as kind eyes, I saw his kind eyes face, all that melted away, and he just said, hi, Dan, how's it going? He held out his hand, shook hands, I introduced him to Harold, we came in, we chit-chatted and laughed while we were setting up, and it was just like any other interview of any other buddy of mine sitting around talking about drums in their career. Awesome. It was wonderful. But that's the only really example where I was that blown away. Everybody else, I love what they've accomplished. I love what they do. I have a high level of respect. Billy Cobham, I do have to give a shout out to my brother Bill. I do a lot of work with Bill, but before I did do a lot of work with Bill, I interviewed him 2 years earlier, and I probably said for half an hour after the interview, every 30 seconds, I can't believe we just interviewed Bill Cobham. I can't believe we just got with Billy. I can't believe we saw him play live. And then, I was just an idiot after that, you know?
Right.
So it speaks to, I think, the fact that there's a time and place for everything, and we are all welcome, of course, to feel however we feel, but we always want to maintain our professionalism. And you know what? It's okay to geek out, and it's okay to love what you do so much and be a kid as well. They say that if you love what you're doing, it's not work.
That's right.
But that's BS, because it takes a lot of work to really make something out of it, and it's still work. But if you love your work and love what you do, you're not going to be shy about putting that energy into it. And you know what? Sometimes you got to work on Sundays. You know what? You might not be able to go to this thing. You know what? I'm in New York, and I can't go to my grandson's play in Oregon or what. You know, that's just life. That's how it goes. You know.
That's right.
And I'm doing it to provide, you know, a beautiful future for my wife and I, and keep things stable now, and be able to do things for our kids and grandkids. Well, not the kids so much as the grandkids, but and if you love what you're doing, you know, you will be healthier. I could tell you that. You'll hopefully be physically and spiritually healthier and emotionally healthier. That's one of the biggest things my wife and I take away from this. My wife and I is older than me, and everybody thinks she's a lot younger than I am. And she tells her art students it's because I love what I do. She gets them to guess her age, you know, and they're saying 34, 32, 40, and she's in her late 50s. And she's lucky, though. She's got those island genes working for her, and the fact that she loves what she does. So those of you who love what you do and you want to make something out of it, don't be shy about working hard, and learn how to do the right things. Please reach out to me at that email, please. And also balance it with the things you love to do outside of that. For me and my wife, it's hiking, it's camping, it's traveling, and we have very little time to do it. And balance isn't 50-50 in quantity, it's 50-50 in quality. So when my wife and I do take a couple of days to do something, we make an adventure out of it. You know, we make sure we get the most out of it.
It's fantastic, and you know, doing what you love keeps you young at heart and physically as well. And I love the story. We all have our musical icons, right? That if we got to sit in front of, we're going to feel a little nervous. So absolutely. And I loved your Ian Pace interview, and your Hal Blaine interview was fantastic as well. Can you say a highlight or two for you of meeting with Hal Blaine?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, like, you could probably mention every interviewed, and I'd get so revved up. I'd get just as much revved up for Ian's interview it just had a different personal connection. The deal with Hal is that I grew up playing to everything he played on, not knowing who the drummer was. I played to the Fifth Dimension. I played to some. That's the music my parents played in the house. They listened to basically Cream, Led Zeppelin, Fifth Dimension, Simon and Garfunkel, and all this other stuff that Hal played on. A lot of people don't know he did all the Led Zeppelin drum tracks. No one knows that. Just kidding.
Okay, I was going to say, wait.
But when I got with Hal, and I remember going to his house for the interview and thinking just the body of music that this man played on, even if you're not familiar with the music, just by numbers sake, it is beyond epic and legendary. And here I am going to his house to just sit down and kibitz about music. And I hope this comes out right, but older people who have lived life always have the best stories and never too many of them. And Hal has stories about his stories that will tell other stories. And you can ask one question and then just sit back and let him go. And I don't know if anyone has seen the picture of him stamping my head, and it's in the interview.
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, so he's got a legendary stamp that says Hal Blaine Strikes Again.
Yes.
And the way it came back, and it's in the interview, which you can find at drumtalktv.com. He, in the days of the Wrecking Crew, he was in the Wrecking Crew, they would have stacks and stacks of music. So if someone said, today we're going to record such and such, he stamped his copies of music, which is mixed in with the horn players and the guitar player and the organ player and all the. So he would just go, and he'd see his stamp, pull out his music, pull out his music. So I asked him about the stamp, and I said, "Do you still have it?" And he said, "Yeah, it's right over there on my desk." I said, "Would you please stamp my head with it?" And he said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "I'd be honored." Okay, so he got up and he got the stamp. I think it's in part 2. It's a 3-part interview because with Hal it was like 90 minutes. He got the stamp, he inked it up and hit me right on the head with it. And in the old days of our interviews, in fact, on Hal's interview, in the intro, there's a shot of me and I have blue tape over my mouth.
Yes, I saw that.
It has his stamp on it that says Hal Blaine Strikes Again on my mouth as well, taped over.
That's fantastic.
On the Facebook page recently, well, depending on when this comes out, it was posted. You could search on Facebook, Drum Talk TV, Hal Blaine, and the interview will come up. You'll see the picture. You'll see that little sequence of events. But, Hal was great to interview because he's simply like artists who are great to interview. Why are they great to interview? Not because of their experiences, but like we said before, they know how to articulate their stories. Maybe Hal's overcorrecting a little bit with a lot of stories. Billy Cobham, same thing. Bill. Bill has the most amazing stories. It's just great. So it's very important to learn that. I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking you an interview question.
Sure.
What are 2 or 3 other interviews that you saw that resonated with you that you liked?
Is it Brian Tichy?
Yes.
So the Bonzo Bash and the Ox and Loon interviews with Brian Tichy, it was awesome. And I love your love of Bonzo because he's my favorite drummer. So that stuff is great that you've done.
Thank you. Brian is also a great interview. Brian has done so many things. He's a people person. He's got great energy. And I don't just mean in wound up energy, but I mean his positive energies. A great dad to 2 twin girls. He's just such a great guy. And I feel such an automatic connection with Brian when we do an interview or just hang out and do something. He's just such a good guy. Absolutely.
Yeah. And obviously the Bonzo Bash is coming up in, I believe, next week in California, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the time people see this, it was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Exactly.
And you'll be able to see coverage of that event on Drum Talk TV, and there's coverage of previous years as well. If you're not familiar with the event or just want to check out some of your favorite drummers that get together and pay homage to Bonzo.
Absolutely. Have you ever gotten to play there? Because I know you show up in interview. You ever get to play?
I haven't yet, but it is the most music that I play in my studio. because it's the language, and I do use the term language, that I first learned in music. I mentioned listening to the radio, learning all those different styles, but literally at about 7 or 8, I started really studying his language of playing, and it's the first drummer who I got the style down. And there's a difference between playing a song and playing the math of it and putting the notes where they go, as opposed to playing the notes how they're played on the drums and gracing the cymbal instead of bashing it, or doing that little drag on the snare that you barely hear, or the flutter of the foot on the bass drum pedal. Those are all the things that make it speaking the same language with the same phonetics and the same dialect. And you can go into any bar on any weekend and someone's playing a Zeppelin song and all the notes are in the right place, but they're not speaking the language.
Yeah.
Was that for guitar, bass, or anything else too?
Absolutely. And going back to what you said before, it sounds like your dad was very cool. If that was your first concert, he took you to Led Zeppelin. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. What do you remember about that show?
I'm sorry, what's that?
I was going to say, what do you remember about that show?
Well, it was my first concert. Wow. And I remember, the first thing I remember is sitting, and we sat at, like, if John's drums were 12 o'clock, we were sitting at about 4 o'clock in the risers, not far from the stage off that corner on Jimmy's side. And I had never seen a stage set up before. So I'm at the LA Forum, seats probably 18,000 with the floor seated. And I remember, like, the lights are on and there's all these people, and the stage is just like, there's just a bunch of shit there. There's just a bunch of junk, all this apparatus. I'm like, this doesn't look like all the posters I have where, you know, Jimmy's doing his thing and it's all black in the background, the spotlight beams. And I'm like really disillusioned at that point. Finally, they come on stage. Lights are flashing, and in those flickers, you see them in the dark getting to their instruments, a little in the dark while the drums are getting ready. And all of a sudden, they start with "The Song Remains the Same," and the lights go on, and the place just explodes. And I almost want to cry. There's all my posters I've ever seen. There's all the pictures I saw in Hit Parader and Circus Magazine and Cream Magazine. And just the fact that it was 3.5 hours long. Wow. Without a break, and all these, it was an incredible, and that's when I said, oh, you can do this for a living? Forget oceanographer. Just the energy and the people in the band became this one organism, and it was just so, this common energy feeding off each other. It was the most beautiful thing. It really was. It really, really was. Not to sound corny, but
no, it sounds incredible.
How I felt, man.
Yeah, it sounds incredible, and a great start to a musical career. So that's really fantastic. Yeah, Dan, a couple of more questions.
Sure.
Years from now, as far as with somebody watching this, if somebody is a musician and they are wanting to try to make it, or even do some kind of show like this, what would you recommend to them? What advice would you give them?
As a musician, right? To make it as a musician?
Correct.
Okay. The first thing is to always be open to change or adaptability, like I was saying before, no matter how zeroed in you are on your thing. And like that experience I said in the 80s, I just wanted to play progressive rock. And that's fine. If you want to just stick to a genre, that's great. But get really good at it and find something in your playing that differentiates yourself from everybody else. If you're going to be a session musician, be as universal as possible. Give people a reason to hire you. Give people a reason to buy your music if you're an artist. Give people a reason to fall in love with not only what you're doing, but who you are. I think these days it's very important. And first and foremost, support others in your community. There's no reason to be critical of others. When it comes to constructive criticism, that's different than people saying, oh, but I don't like how he's holding a stick, or what's with the hair, or those are crappy drums, or why sparkle, or who cares? Would a blind person care? No, it's all about the music. And everything else is extra and secondary. So support your fellow musician, learn from each other, And seriously, and I'm not trying to sell my services when I say this, seriously learn what marketing yourself is all about, because no one will care as much as you do. No one will be able to do it as well as you do. Even if you're going to hire someone to do it for you, learn how to do it. Otherwise, how are you going to hire the right person if you don't know how it's done? Right. And how are you going to follow up and make sure they're getting results for you? So really understand the business part of it. So many of us want to do this, right? Watch, they want to do this. I'm an artist. Sorry, I bumped the thing. You know, they just want to be up here and create and all that. And
yeah,
I totally understand that. But be responsible to yourself as a brand and as a business. But you know, that's part of the responsibility of going into business. And you're a business. You're a brand. And if you don't want to deal with people and you don't want an audience in public and you're the session person or a producer or a writer for someone else, that's fine. Understand where you fit and optimize what it takes to get the most out of that dynamic, whether it's an educator, a performer, or a writer, or a session person, producer, or if you're in management or PR or distribution or whatever it is, it's really all the same.
If we're talking about a legacy, especially with Drum Talk TV and how much work that you have put into that, your blood, sweat, and tears, if there was one thing as part of that legacy, one feeling in the world that you would want people to have about that, what would it be?
I want everybody that spends the time and energy to give them a few minutes of their life of what we do. I want them to get something out of it. I want them to either be, and these could all be rolled up into one thing or different slices of the pie, but I want them to be inspired by something we've done, who we've talked to, what we've shown, material we've curated. I want them to be inspired. I want them to be entertained. I want them to learn. I want them to have some takeaway that sticks with them and gets them to do something, even if it's just in their own music or telling their nephew, hey, you really should check this out, or their daughter, or show their daughter Emmanuel Caplet's interview, or Sarah Thaller's drumming or interview, or, you know, I could go on and encourage them as young ladies to go ahead, become a professional drummer if that's what you want to do, or, you know, different things like that. Or if you have a physical handicap, you know, whether you have like Andrew Hewitt of Can-Do Muso cerebral palsy or acquired brain damage, as some of his students have had, or like Daniel Potts, who has no arms but he's a drummer, or Joe Hardy, who has no legs but he's a drummer. Whatever it is, whether you're a drummer, guitar player, or a chef, or a mechanic, don't let any of these things get in your way. There's always a way, and there's plenty of proof of that. So I want people to get that, you know, those types of things from the material we put out. It doesn't even have to be that cerebral. It could just be something that made them smile that day, and that to me, that's a good enough legacy for me.
Sounds great. Yeah, very inspiring. Dan Shinder of DrumTalkTV.com and social media on steroids. Did I miss anything else?
No, I think that's good for now. We'll push the cooking show as it develops, but if anyone wants to peek, it's food that craves you. And if you tap into that now, you'll start getting all the updates in a couple months when we start spinning it out.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the show.